Part 28. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 271. Princess Dingyuan wanted to accompany Ling Chu to change clothes, but she refused. It was just a matter of changing clothes. She was not a child and she needed someone to accompany her. Ling Chu was going to change clothes, and the nun in charge asked a palace maid to show her the way. After leaving the banquet, he asked Xiaoji to get some spare clothes, while Ling Chu followed the palace maid to the side hall. The side hall was specially prepared by the empress and the steward for the guests who came to attend the banquet. Although the layout is not luxurious, in addition to tables, chairs, couches, and even a bed. This is so that ladies can have a place to rest if they need to change or are tired. Seeing that Xiaoji had not come back from getting clothes, Ling Chu simply lay down on the couch to rest. After the palace maid poured her a cup of tea, she saw that she was about to rest, so she retreated to the door to guard her. Ling Chu drank a glass of fruit wine at the banquet. Because the wine was sour and sweet and quite appetizing, she drank the whole glass without realizing it. Now I was lying on the couch, feeling sleepy all of a sudden. Although he was sleepy, Ling Chu did not forget where he was. I turned on the system, summoned the small hammer, and then fell asleep with peace of mind. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly there was a slight sound of opening the door in the house. Ling Chu suddenly opened his eyes and saw a young master crossing the threshold from the system. The young master was dressed in a brocade robe, with an unfamiliar face and staggering steps. Ling Chu even smelled of alcohol. Before he had time to think about why this man appeared here, Ling Chu knocked the man unconscious with a hammer, then stood up from the couch and prepared to leave the room. If someone found a man in the room where she was resting, she wouldn't be able to explain it clearly even if she had 800 mouths. As soon as he reached the door, Ling Chu heard footsteps. Just about to attach the invisibility talisman in his hand to his body, but when he saw the person coming from the system, Ling Chu put the talisman away again. As soon as I turned around, I happened to be face to face with the person coming. When Princess Dingyuan saw her, her frown immediately opened and she smiled, "Miss Ling." As soon as he finished speaking, his expression changed when he saw the man lying at Ling Chu's feet. Princess Dingyuan rushed towards Ling Chu quickly. Without thinking, she reached out and grabbed her arm and pulled her towards the door. "Quickly, don't let anyone see her." Ling Chu didn't resist and followed her pull and walked out. Looking at Princess Dingyuan's anxious face and the clothes in her other hand, a warm current suddenly surged in her heart. Seeing that King Dingyuan wanted to pull her out of the side hall, Ling Chu pulled her to the opposite room and said, "Princess, there is no one in this room." Princess Dingyuan was anxious. She just wanted to leave this place quickly so that no one would see Ling Chu and the man in the same room. She had no time to think about why Ling Chu knew that there was no one in the room opposite. Ling Chu saw it from the system's scan. There were many people coming to the banquet, and the queen asked her to prepare a side hall with more than a dozen rooms. After entering the house opposite, Princess Dingyuan quickly locked the door and breathed a sigh of relief. He hesitated for a while before speaking, "Miss Ling, that young man just now." Before she finished speaking, Ling Chu knew what she was going to ask. "I didn't know that person either. I was just resting in the house when I heard the door open and saw it was a man. In order to avoid misunderstanding, I had to knock him unconscious." Princess Dingyuan stroked her chest and praised, "It's a good smash. It doesn't matter who he is, just smash it." Ling Chu smiled. After boasting, the princess frowned again. "Why are you alone in the house, and where are your maids and maids?" "The maid went to get me some clothes, but she never came back. As for the palace maid, she was waiting outside when I was resting in the house." Princess Dingyuan frowned again, feeling that this was too much of a coincidence. Ling Chu's maid never returned, the maid who was waiting on her was missing, and a strange man broke into the house. I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. Ling Chu also noticed what Princess Ding Yuan was thinking. The reason why she chose the house opposite was to make it easier to see the subsequent development. Looking out the window at the house opposite, I didn't see much movement for the time being. By the way, why did the princess come to the side hall? Princess Ding Yuan came to her senses and then remembered that she still had clothes in her hand. I saw that you never came back after you left. Maybe you didn't bring any spare clothes. I just bought a set of dresses from Yuehua building today. I thought they would be suitable for you to wear, so I sent them to you. Princess Ding Yuan was extremely glad that she came over at this time, otherwise this girl would have been frightened when this happened. Ling Chu didn't know what Princess Ding Yuan was thinking. She was looking at the beautifully embroidered clothes and said, "The princess bought this set of clothes for the county boss." Princess Ding Yuan didn't hide it from her, "I really bought it for Yao Yao. I thought she was not feeling well and couldn't come to the banquet, so I bought a new set of clothes to make her happy. Since it belongs to the county owner, I can't take away what others like. It's just a set of clothes. I'll just buy another set after I leave the palace. I'm afraid there's something fishy about what happened today. Your maid hasn't come back yet, and I don't know what happened. You can't keep waiting here." Ling Chu knew that what Princess Ding Yuan said was reasonable, and the girl Xiaji didn't know if there was an accident. She had to have someone look for her. Ling Chu did not refuse anymore. After thanking the princess, he took the clothes and started changing. Seeing her take the clothes, Princess Ding Yuan was all smiles. The room was not big and there was no screen. Ling Chu could only turn his back and take off his clothes. Seeing that Ling Chu's maid was not there, the princess couldn't help but help her. He shook the clothes in his hands with a smile and was about to put them on her. Princess Ding Yuan was stunned as her eyes glanced at Ling Chu's abdomen unintentionally. Something seemed to flash through my mind quickly. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from outside. Princess Ding Yuan's thoughts stopped. Without having time to think too much, he quickly handed the clothes to Ling Chu and urged, "Hurry up and put them on." Ling Chu was just turning around and putting the clothes he had taken off aside, but didn't notice anything strange about the princess. Hearing the scream, he immediately took the clothes and put them on. In the room opposite, the maid only screamed once before her mouth was covered by the palace maid. But it still alarmed people, and suddenly several maids and nuns rushed in from outside the palace. The palace maid wanted to rush forward and close the door, but the maid grabbed her arm in a panic and wouldn't let go. Seeing the man in the room, the expressions of those who came over changed. "This is a side hall prepared for ladies and ladies. How can there be men?" While confused, the maid said with an uneasy look on her face, "Miss Ling is changing clothes inside. Why is there a man in her room?" The palace maid's face darkened. Something scandalous happened at the banquet, but it was a disgrace to the queen. The queen pursues the case, and those who wait on her will also follow suit. There is a nun who wants to suppress the matter quickly before it gets too big. Princess Guangping walked over quickly from the other side and said, "A man broke into the room where Miss Ling was dressing. Why don't you go in and take a look? What if something happens, can you afford it?" End of this chapter. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 272. Princess, this. The palace maid looked pale and looked at Princess Guangping pleadingly, hoping that she would suppress the matter. But Princess Guangping ignored her and instead winked at the maid. The maid who was holding onto the palace maid's hand in a panic was no longer panicking at all. She threw away the palace maid's hand and rushed into the house. With Princess Guangping watching, the palace maids could only follow the maids into the house. The palace maid followed behind with a pale face and heavy steps. The steward sent her to serve Miss Ling, but after she left, something happened to Miss Ling. When the queen is investigated, she will be the first to be held accountable. The palace maid could already foresee her miserable future, but as soon as she stepped into the house, she heard the maid's angry voice, "Miss Ling is not in the house." The palace maid was stunned. Looking subconsciously at the couch in the room, Miss Ling was indeed not there. There was no one else in the room except the man lying on the ground. Princess Guangping's smile froze as she looked proud and waiting to see the joke. Angrily asked the maid, "What are you saying? Miss Ling is not in the house." As soon as he finished speaking, a cold voice came from behind, "What, are you looking for me?" Everyone turned their heads. Opposite, Ling Chu and Princess Ding Yuan, who were wearing fairy skirts with wide sleeves, were looking at them coldly. Seeing Ling Chu, the palace maid almost cried with joy. Princess Guangping, however, was so angry that she clenched her fists. This is so lucky that she escaped death again. A nanny looked at Ling Chu in confusion. "Miss Ling, aren't you changing in this room?" "Why?" Before Ling Chu could speak, Princess Ding Yuan frowned and said, "Mom, you must have remembered wrongly. Miss Ling has been in the room opposite me." The maid roared angrily, "It's impossible, the palace maid clearly said that Miss Ling is in this room." Princess Ding Yuan didn't wait for her to finish speaking, and interrupted her sharply, "How dare you, a maid, are you questioning what I said? Someone, slap me." Princess Ding Yuan has always been gentle in temperament and rarely gets angry with her servants. Strange to say, she didn't want to tolerate what the maid said at all today. When the palace maid heard Princess Ding Yuan's concession, she slapped the maid backhand without hesitation. The maid covered her face with her hands and stared at her with burning eyes. Princess Guangping had a dark face. This slap was not just her maid, it was also a slap in the face of her, the princess. Ling Chu looked at the maid with cold eyes. "Who told you that I was in this room? What do you, a maid, mean by slandering my innocence like this? Do I have no grievances against you, or are you being instigated by others? No one who can work in the palace is a fool. What happened today was obviously abnormal." The maids and ladies in the palace all looked at Princess Guangping intentionally or unintentionally. The maid's heart skipped a beat, and she pointed at the palace maid angrily, "I'm unjust. She said Miss Ling was resting in this room, so I was kind enough to follow her and serve her together." Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the house, he saw Mr. Lin in the house. Ling Chu said nothing and glanced at the palace maid lightly. The palace maid is not stupid, she knows that she can be safe only if Ling Chu is fine. She knew what to do in her favor without Ling Chu opening her mouth. Staring at the maid, she said righteously, "You are talking nonsense. When did I say that Miss Ling was in this room? Miss Ling has been in the opposite room with Princess Ding Yuan." The maid hated Princess Guangping so much that she was standing outside, and it was this maid who came to her, saying that she was hungry and wanted to go to the latrine, begging her to help Princess Guangping change her clothes. The palace maid was almost crying when she saw the maid, and also saw that Miss Ling was still resting, and she would not be needed for a while. So his heart softened and he agreed to help her and help Princess Guangping change her clothes. Unexpectedly, this maid actually wanted to use her to slander Miss Ling. Fortunately, Miss Ling is fine. If something happened to her, she, the maid sent to serve, would be the first to suffer. The maid was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She didn't expect that the palace maid would open her eyes and tell lies. Princess Guangping secretly scolded the maid for not succeeding enough but failing more than failing. She couldn't handle even small things well and it was a waste of her arrangements. This is the side hall where the female family members rest. How could Mr. Lin break in here? Someone, wake Mr. Lin up to see who made an appointment with him here for a tryst. Although he couldn't block the little and Mr. Lin in the room together, as long as he revealed that it was Ling Chu who made an appointment with him to meet here, that little bitch's reputation will still be ruined. Princess Guangping asked people to wake the man up, but the maids did not move. The maid snorted coldly, turned around and entered the room, brought tea and poured it on the man's face. Damn, who dared to throw water at me after eating the heart of a bear and the courage of a leopard? The man opened his eyes, stretched out his hand to wipe the tea on his face, and got up angrily. As soon as he rolled up his sleeves, he wanted to hit someone, but when he saw that there were women around him, he couldn't help but be startled. Princess Guangping took the opportunity to ask, "Mr. Lin, why are you here, but someone asked you to meet here?" Although Mr. Lin is a dandy, he is not a fool. He did not speak in a hurry, but glanced at Princess Guangping, then turned to look around. Although he didn't know where this place was, there were women around him, and they stared at him in a bad way. He probably went into something he shouldn't have. This is the palace, and he has to be careful. If something goes wrong, his grandfather will break his legs. Lin Yujia's mind was spinning rapidly. He remembered that he followed his grandfather Yu Shunho into the palace to attend a banquet today. The wine in the palace tasted so good that he drank too much because he was greedy. In order to avoid making a fool of himself at the banquet, he originally wanted to find a place to rest. But he couldn't remember how he came here. Princess Guangping saw that his eyes were moving around but he didn't speak, so she couldn't help but urged, "Mr. Lin, which girl asked you to meet here?" Lin Yujia glared at her without any trace, and sneered in his heart. Princess Guangping thought he was and couldn't tell that she was trying to set a trap for him. Ling Chu glanced at Princess Guangping coldly, pointed at the maid and said to Lin Yujia, "Mr. Lin, the maid said that you were drunk and broke into the room where I was resting. Do you think this is the case?" Lin Yujia's pupils shrank and he swallowed subconsciously. Isn't this Ling Xiangwu? He had seen her hit people with a shovel and a small hammer on the street. Lin Yujia turned around, raised his foot, and kicked the maid hard. "You cheap maid, how dare you slander the young master?" Although the young master drank, he was not drunk enough to lose consciousness. "Originally, I wanted to find a place to rest, but I remember that it was you, a cheap maid, who deliberately lured me here, saying that this was the room where the male guests rested. I didn't expect that you, a cheap maid, deliberately took advantage of me while I was drunk and wanted to use me to slander others. Say, who gave your dog the guts to slander me?" End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 273. Master Lin, you broke into Miss Ling's house while you were drunk. How could you still accuse your maid unjustly? Lin Yujia glared at Princess Guangping, who said, "I broke into Miss Ling's house. When I came, there was no one in the house." Princess Guangping did not expect that this dude would dare to hit someone in front of her. She originally thought that he was a dude, and I heard that he was also lustful. When he saw the appearance of the little bitch, he would definitely take the opportunity and not let go. You said you were not drunk, so why didn't you leave? Instead, you stayed in the house where the women rested, and even slept on the ground. Lin Yujia squinted at her. "If I didn't stay, how would I know that it was you, an old witch, who wanted to slander me? Also, I am free to sleep wherever I want. As an outsider, are you being too lenient? She is really carefree and careless, she is more in charge than my grandma. For a nosy old witch like you, no wonder King Guangping would rather hug you in the brothel than look at you again at home. This Lin Yujia is indeed a playboy. He doesn't save face at all when he scolds people." The smile on Ling Chu's lips couldn't be suppressed. This dude had such a poisonous mouth. But I have to say, the scolding was really good. Princess Guangping was so angry that her lips trembled. He actually called her an old witch. When did I, the princess, ever slander you? It was you who broke into the resting place of the female family members. Lin Yujia sneered and interrupted, "It's true that I am a dude, but I am not a fool. If you hadn't deliberately asked the maid to lead me here, how could I have come here?" Princess Guangping was so angry that smoke was rising from her head, and she wanted to strangle Lin Yujia to death. But seeing his generous look, he didn't dare to say anything else, for fear that he would report his dissatisfaction to the emperor. If we investigate, she will definitely not be able to escape. Since there is a misunderstanding, let's just pretend that I didn't say anything. Princess Guangping shook her sleeves and left with a sullen face. Lin Yujia snorted coldly at her back. Although he was a playboy, he didn't want to make the matter a big deal. After all, this was in the palace. If his grandfather knew that he was drunk and was being used to get in with the women, he would definitely deal with him personally. Everyone left, and Ling Chu and Princess Ding Yuan also left the side hall together. The banquet is not over yet, so they can't stay away. Princess Ding Yuan sighed and patted Ling Chu's hand. What happened this time must be that Princess Guangping was annoyed with you and was venting her anger on Princess Ping Yang. Although no one saw Lin Yujia break into your house, but it's better not to make a big deal about this matter, otherwise if word gets out, your future marriage plans will be affected and you will be wronged. The Ling family has been defeated, and the marriage has been cancelled, so Ling Chu's marriage must be very difficult. Princess Ding Yuan felt that this child was very compatible with her, and she began to think in her mind that she should pay more attention to the talents around her in the future and help her choose a suitable marriage. Ling Chu smiled and said nothing more. She doesn't feel wronged. As for what Princess Guangping did today, she will always get it back. Xiaoji has not come back since he left, for fear of an accident. Fortunately, she had done some calculation before and knew that her life was not in danger. It's just that she's not familiar with the palace, and it's hard for her to wander around, so she has to ask Ning Chui to help. Today she went to the palace to attend a banquet, and she could only bring one maid with her. None of the other guards followed her into the palace, and she didn't have anyone to deliver a message to Master Ning. But she couldn't let go of the summer solstice. After hesitating for a moment, Ling Chu said, "Princess, can you lend me your maid to deliver a message to Commander Ning? I want him to help find my maid." Princess Ding Yuan said cheerfully, "Why don't you go to the male guest? I'll ask the maid to deliver a message to him. You can wait in peace." Knowing that Ling Chu was worried, she returned to the banquet place. Princess Ding Yuan found her maid and asked her to go find Ning Chui immediately. "I have a useful princess." Princess Ding Yuan said angrily, "It's just a small effort, don't worry about it. The banquet is not over yet, we have been away for such a long time, it's time to go back." Ling Chu nodded and followed the princess back to the palace. The banquet is not over yet, the ladies are enjoying the singing and dancing, while tasting the fine wine and delicacies. They both returned to their seats together. Princess Guangping, who came back first, snorted coldly and turned her head away. Ling Chu and Princess Ding Yuan both treated her like nothing. Princess Jing, who was sitting on the other side, frowned and glanced at Princess Guangping, then turned to look at Ling Chu. He smiled and said, "Your previous dress was too plain, but this dress is nice. You are at the same age as Hua, and it's time to dress up and show your best side. Don't always wear the same clothes as before. The dusty Taoist robe." Hearing Princess Jing's praise, Princess Ding Yuan became even more happy. "I also think this dress looks better on Chu Chu than on my Yao Yao." Princess Jing looked at her funny, "You call her so kindly, you already have a daughter, do you really want to treat this girl as your daughter?" Princess Ding Yuan smiled and glanced at Ling Chu, "Why not? I am in love with this child, and I feel happy when I see her." If Ling Chu's parents were not still alive, Princess Ding Yuan would have really wanted to take Ling Chu back to her house and raise her as a daughter. Ling Chu listened to the two princesses muttering with a smile, but his thoughts went outside. "I don't know if Ning Chui has found that girl Xiaoji. The banquet was still going on, and the palace maids brought new royal dishes from time to time, and the scene was filled with singing and dancing. Fortunately, not long after, the maid of Princess Ding Yuan came back. There are many people in the palace, so it is difficult for the maid to speak directly. Taking the opportunity of serving tea to Ling Chu, he quickly whispered something in his ear. The maid served tea, and after she left, a palace maid served another royal meal. After the palace maid left, Ling Chu excused himself to change his clothes and left the banquet. After following the maid and walking around twists and turns for half a quarter of an hour, I finally saw Ning Chui. Seeing Xiaoji standing aside, Ling Chu breathed a sigh of relief. Handed down and bowed to Ning Chui, "Thank you, sir." Ning Chui glanced at her and saw her looking at Xiaoji worriedly, and said softly, "She was beaten with a sap, and the attacker beat her a little hard. It's best to ask a doctor to take a look after she goes back." "Don't worry, girl, I'm fine. I'm just a little dizzy. Just go back and have a rest." "Can you see who hit you?" Xiaoji subconsciously shook his head, but as soon as he moved, he felt dizzy and felt like vomiting. Ling Chu quickly stretched out his hand to support her. Seeing that her expression was not good, Xiaoji looked frustrated and said, "I didn't see the person who did it." Although he didn't see the person who slapped the sap, Ling Chu could probably guess that it was Princess Guangping who had someone move her hands. Xiaoji was hit with a concussion and had to see a doctor first. As for Princess Guangping, since we owe each other, we will definitely meet again. Ling Chu was about to take Xiaoji out of the palace, but Wei Feng hurried over. "Sir, someone was poisoned at the women's banquet. Thanks to FIFA monthly ticket for your support. Thanks to 553, Pen Yongfang, Bai Jifu, King Shizhuang Chuang, Yangliuan, Dusty Memory, 2023-012-3821. Ed, Yuan Wan, Lang, Hirtat, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, 2023-0121012702243, Fei Fi, Pros. BA, China Fuse, CHLWCH, Cheesy One, Hacked Book Friends keep checking in again, CM. EA, Dark and Twisted Crawling, Jin Yingzi, Falling Leaves Haikyuu. Ad, Sihide, Why Do You Grow Old, Chen, Woohoo 1402121840214228, Daoyo. EB. 20230208431051, Morning Glory Under the Scorching Sun. Ixixi, Silent Blessing, White Clouds, Strong Wind, and Lightning. Supported by recommendation votes from Book Friends. Thanks to Hungziu and the Book Friends who support Hungziu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 274. Chapter 274, This Thing is Poisonous. Ling Chu was surprised. She was fine when she left. How could someone be poisoned in such a short time? Ning Chui frowned and looked at Wei Feng. What happened? My lord, I don't know the specific subordinates. The queen sent someone to report to the emperor that at the banquet of the female family, some guests suddenly suffered from abdominal pain, dizziness, and vomiting, and the imperial doctor is currently treating them. Wei Feng looked at Ning Chui anxiously. My lord, the emperor asked you to go back and assist in the investigation. Ning Chui did not move, but looked at Ling Chu first. I'm afraid you won't be able to leave for the time being. Ling Chu nodded. Let's go, I'll go back with you. Such a big thing happened at the Queen's banquet. Everyone who participated in the banquet was a suspect and had to be investigated. Seeing that Xiaoji's expression was not good, Ling Chu took 2 calming charms and asked her to carry them close to her body. The group returned to the banquet. The emperor and the queen sat high on the throne, and the palace guards surrounded them with expressionless faces. The lady and the lady who came to the banquet stood on one side, looking uneasy. The Minister of Punishment is leading his men to interrogate the serving maids one by one. Still standing on the other side were the imperial chefs of all sizes in the imperial dining room and the servants, all looking anxious and uneasy. Sun Yuanzheng of Tai Hospital was taking the imperial doctors on duty to diagnose the pulse of Princess Jinyuan and the others. As soon as she saw Ning Chui, Princess Pingyang felt happy. But when he saw Ling Chu coming in behind him, a surge of anger immediately surged in his heart. Originally Princess Pingyang was taken away after being reprimanded by the Queen Mother, but when she heard that Princess Guangping was poisoned, she immediately begged the Queen Mother and hurried over. Princess Pingyang's heart moved when she saw the Emperor and Queen sitting at the head. "Master Ning, have you found the murderer of the poison? It was Miss Ling who poisoned me, right?" Ning Chui glanced at her expressionlessly and turned away, holding her hands in front of the Emperor and Empress. Seeing that Ning Chui ignored her, Princess Pingyang glared at Ling Chu with hatred. Ling Chu didn't even give her a glance. After saluting the Emperor and Queen, he immediately walked towards Princess Ding Yuan. Princess Pingyang became even more annoyed when she was ignored in public. "Ling Chu, my mother-in-law and Princess Jing have no enmity against you. Why did you poison them? Why don't you hand over the antidote quickly?" As soon as he said these words, all kinds of eyes turned towards Ling Chu. Concubine paused while drinking tea. Ling Chu was worried when he saw Princess Ding Yuan vomiting. "I didn't want to pay attention to Princess Pingyang at first, but seeing her pestering her again and again, I became angry. Why, Princess Pingyang, do you think you are more powerful than Master Di? Master Di is still interrogating, but you already know who poisoned me. The princess is so powerful, it is too humiliating to be just an unknown lady. How about asking the emperor to issue an order to let the princess join the Ministry of Punishment as an official?" "You." Princess Pingyang was ashamed and annoyed. Her lips trembled for a long time and she was speechless. What a sharp-tongued person. Princess Guangping was poisoned, and Pingyang was worried about her mother and concubine. It is only human nature. Miss Ling was so anxious and blushing. Could it be that she really had a guilty conscience? In fact, it's not surprising that Pingyang would ask. Even I am curious. It is obvious that you and Princess Guangping were eating at the same table, why are you the only one who is not poisoned?" Ling Chu looked at concubine intently. Princess Pingyang had previously instigated Xiao Zhen to poison the queen's precious koi carp, and she also pushed concubine An's niece into the pond and poisoned her to death. Concubine An obviously wanted to tear Princess Pingyang alive before, but now she actually spoke for her. While Ling Chu was thinking about it, Princess Ding Yuan and the others over there started vomiting into the spittoons again. Saving people was the most important thing, and Ling Chu didn't want to waste time arguing with concubine An. "Your Majesty, the daughter of the people believes that the top priority is to let the imperial doctors and others do their best to treat Princess Ding Yuan and the others. As for who poisoned the people, I believe they will be found out as long as Master Di is here." The emperor saw Ning Chui standing aside with pursed lips, exuding the aura of keeping strangers away from him, and knew that he must be suppressing his anger. The emperor said nothing, only looked at concubine with a majestic look. No matter how dissatisfied concubine was, she did not dare to speak again. With no one looking for trouble, Ling Chu quickly walked towards Princess Ding Yuan and the others. The one on the left is Prince Ding Yuan, and Ling Chu's eyes fell on the middle-aged uncle on the right. Having similar facial features to Prince Ding Yuan, the difference is that there is a strong aura of murder in his face. This must be King Ding Yuan without a doubt. Although he looked majestic, Ling Chu felt a sense of kindness in his heart. Just seeing Princess Ding Yuan's blue lips, Ling Chu's heart tightened and he had no time to think about anything else. Sun Yuanzheng just finished taking the pulse. The crown prince of Ding Yuan couldn't wait to speak. Sun Yuanzheng. Sun Yuanzheng said nothing, frowned and looked to the other side. Ling Chu followed his gaze and saw that several imperial doctors were testing the poisons on the imperial meals. Princess Ding Yuan was leaning on her mother weakly, but when she saw Ling Chu, she couldn't help but smile. Chu Chu, it's great that you're okay. Ling Chu nodded with a smile. Don't worry, princess, you will be fine. Seeing the intimacy between the two, King Dingyuan and Han Lin couldn't help but glance at Princess Dingyuan in surprise, and then turned to look at Ling Chu. Seeing that her eyebrows were similar to Princess Dingyuan's, surprise flashed in her eyes. It's just that Princess Dingyuan was poisoned, and they didn't want to think about it further. Sun Yuanzheng and several imperial doctors took turns to check the pulses of Princess Jing and Princess Guangping. Although they were induced to vomit immediately, they also took detoxification pills. But the specific poison has not yet been found out, so the detoxification pills are not symptomatic and have little effect. Today the Empress held a banquet, and the imperial kitchen tried its best to prepare more than a dozen kinds of snacks, not to mention other dishes. It took a while, but the imperial doctors hadn't finished checking everything. Ling Chu simply opened the system secretly. Ding! Pufferfish toxin detected. Ling Chu looked at the table, where 4 bowls of MRS Song's fish soup were placed. The other 3 bowls were all used, except for the bowl on her seat. The maid happened to come to deliver the message at that time, and she went to find Ning Chui and Xiaji, so she didn't have time to use it. In the delicate and small bowl, the fish soup looks delicious and delicious. Ning Chui happened to walk over and saw her staring at the bowl of fish soup, so he couldn't help but follow her gaze. When he saw the fish soup, his heart moved. Were you sitting in this position before? Ling Chu looked up at him and found that his mind was indeed sharp. Exactly. MRS Chen, who was on the side, heard their conversation, glanced at the bowl of fish soup thoughtfully, walked over and started to examine it. This Song Sao fish soup is made by cooking fresh mandarin fish with ham, mushrooms, bamboo shoots, chicken soup and other condiments. Physician Chen picked out the mandarin fish and ham and other items inside and carefully identified them one by one. However, after carefully inspecting the entire bowl of fish soup, I found that nothing was added that shouldn't be added, and I couldn't help but feel disappointed. Just as he was about to wipe his hands and check the next dish, Ling Chu pointed at something and said, "Wait a minute, Dr. Chen, this thing is poisonous." Thanks for the monthly vote support of 20220428175028022. Thanks to Bayun, Silent Blessings, Ixixi, Morning Glory Under the Scorching Sun, Hacked Book Friends keep checking in again, 202302084311051, Daoyo. EB, 140212184021428, Woohoo Dash, Strong Wind and Lightning, Dark and Twisted Crawling, Chen Rong, 20170318191430835, Wu, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, UN1, Kingshit Shuang, Eden of the East, 202302084311051, CHLWCH, Forget Me Not, Penyong Fang, 854-729, Daoyo. EB, Wei, Yunyun All Living Beings, 20211022120741050, Jin Yinzi, Prose. BA, Mentioning the Pen for the Future, Mentioning the Pen for the Future, China Fuse, 2023021210127022243, Chen, 140212184021428, Dusty Memories, Why We Grow Old, Ixixi, Silent Blessings and other book friends recommendation votes support. Thanks to Hungzio and Xiaoxiang for supporting book friends. End of this chapter. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 275. Chapter 275 Unjust Accusation. As soon as Ling Chu finished speaking, everyone looked at her. Physician Chen paused, looked in the direction of Ling Chu's finger, and frowned. He remembered identifying it just now. It was a small piece of fish skin. He raised his head and glanced at Ling Chu, and saw that her face was serious, and she didn't look like she was joking. Physician Chen suddenly became confused. Perhaps he saw it wrong? Picked up the chopsticks placed aside again, picked up the piece of fish skin, and looked at it over and over again. After carefully confirming it again and again, Dr. Chen said, "Miss Ling, this is just a piece of fish skin." As soon as Mrs. Chen finished speaking, everyone couldn't help but feel disappointed. Princess Pingyang originally thought Ling Chu had found something poisonous, but she didn't expect it was just a piece of fish skin. Couldn't help but sarcastically said, "Miss Ling, you don't know much about medicine, but you want to do your best in front of the imperial doctor. It's simply ridiculous. Since you don't understand, don't pretend to understand. Just go and wait quietly for the doctor to find out the poison." Ling Chu glanced at Princess Pingyang coldly, turned around and said, "Mr. Chen, this is indeed fish skin. But this piece is not mandarin fish skin, but puffer fish skin." Physician Chen's expression changed. Pufferfish is delicious, but its liver, blood, eyes, gills, skin, and other parts are poisonous. Although Dr. Chen knew that many parts of pufferfish were poisonous, he never liked eating fish and had no habit of cooking. Therefore, I don't know much about ordinary fish, and even less about pufferfish. He could tell that the small piece was fish skin, but he was not sure whether it was puffer fish skin. Sun Yuan stepped forward quickly, took the piece of fish skin and carefully identified it for a while before saying, "This is indeed the skin of a puffer fish." It's no wonder that Dr. Chen couldn't recognize it. Although pufferfish tastes delicious, it's poisonous in many parts of its body, so ordinary people can't handle it at all. Generally, very few people eat pufferfish. Even if an experienced person kills the pufferfish, if he accidentally doesn't handle it properly, he will be poisoned if he eats it. It was precisely because he loved eating fish, and because he was an imperial physician and had studied the pufferfish specifically, that he could barely identify that small piece of pufferfish skin. In order to prevent himself from making a mistake, Dr. Chen specially asked two royal chefs to come over and let them identify it. The two royal chefs who were named came over with white faces and identified the piece of fish skin repeatedly, confirming that it was the skin of pufferfish. In addition to the bowl of Mrs. Song's fish soup that Ling Chu had not used, Dr. Chen also found puffer fish skin in the leftover fish soup that Princess Ding Yuan and the three of them had eaten. Originally, there was no fish skin in Song's fish soup, but the poisoner chose the belly of the puffer fish, which happens to be white, so if you are not careful, it will be mistaken for mandarin fish meat. The queen frowned. "I remember that there is no puffer fish in today's menu. Where did this puffer fish come from? This fish is difficult to handle, and it is impossible for the queen to use it to entertain courtiers and ladies." In fact, not only was there no puffer fish in today's menu, but no one in the entire palace ate this fish. After all, no one wants to bury his or her life because of greed. Ning Chui looked at the group of royal chefs with cold eyes. "Who made this fish soup today?" The in charge of the imperial kitchen said solemnly, "It's Liao Yuchu." Liao Yuchu rushed over with staggering steps, staring at the piece of fish skin with disbelief on his face. "How come there is puffer fish in Mrs. Song's fish soup?" Seeing the emperor looking over with majestic eyes, Chef Liao immediately felt weak in his legs and knocked his head heavily. "Your Majesty, I am wronged. In this Mrs. Song's fish soup, I used mandarin fish instead of puffer fish at all." The emperor had a sullen face and ignored the chef. "Now that we know what caused the poisoning, the top priority is to help Princess Ding Yuan and the others detoxify." Physician Chen's expression did not improve. "Your Majesty, I am ashamed. I cannot cure this poison." Although he had spent a lot of time researching this pufferfish in order to be able to eat it with confidence, unfortunately, he had not been able to find a way to detoxify it after years of research. As soon as Chen Tai finished speaking, many people's expressions changed. The emperor frowned and said to the imperial doctors, "Dear sirs, isn't there any way? The ones who were poisoned were the three princesses. If they were poisoned to death at the palace banquet, the consequences would be..." The emperor's face was grave. No matter what he considered, he didn't want to see anything happen to them. The imperial doctors present all looked bad. They gathered together to discuss for a long time, but still couldn't find any good solution. But an imperial doctor frowned and thought for a while, and said, "I remember that there is a folk saying that reed root soup can be used to relieve puffer fish poison." Sun Yuanzhang shook his head. "I have studied it and found that reed root soup is not very effective and cannot completely eliminate the poison of puffer fish." Sun Yuanzhang glanced at Princess Jing and the others, and thought to himself that even if the reed root soup could detoxify, it would still be too late. Since Ling Chu pointed out that the piece of puffer fish skin was there, he had been standing quietly aside without saying anything. Secretly, he opened the system and searched for the antidote. After rummaging for a while, I finally found the antidote, but it required 2 medium-grade energy stones to redeem it. Ling Chu was not sure whether Princess Ding Yuan was her biological mother, but no matter whether she was, she couldn't do nothing to save her. Although she had a grudge against Han Yao, she had a good impression of Princess Ding Yuan, and Princess Jing was not disliked either. Since she had a way to help them detoxify, she couldn't just watch them die of poison. Ling Chu had just 2 pieces of jade left in his hand, which were gifts given to her by Ning Chui when her shop opened. Seeing that Princess Ding Yuan and the others were getting worse and worse, Ling Chu couldn't care less about the 2 pieces of emeralds he felt sorry for, and quickly exchanged them for the antidote. Sun Yuanzheng and other imperial doctors had several broken beards, and they did not think of a way to detoxify them. Princess Guangping suddenly collapsed, her face full of despair. She was still so young and she didn't want to die. Even though Princess Jing and Princess Ding Yuan didn't want to die, the imperial doctors couldn't cure the poison, so there was nothing they could do. The 2 of them have begun to blur their consciousness, and they still have many regrets in their hearts. The only comfort is that the 3 of them died together, and they finally have company on the road to hell, so they won't be too lonely. Prince Ding Yuan and his son held the hands of Princess Ding Yuan tightly, their faces full of sadness. King Jing and King Guangping also looked angry and sad. At this moment, a shout suddenly came from the distance, "Mother concubine, mother concubine." As soon as she finished speaking, a young man in brocade robes rushed toward Princess Ding Yuan like a whirlwind. A panting girl was followed behind. Hearing the shouting, Princess Ding Yuan, who was originally unconscious, struggled to open her eyes and said weakly, "Song-er." Han Song, the second son of the Prince of Ding Yuan, rushed over and grabbed her arm with a look of eagerness on his face. "Concubine, I heard that you were poisoned. How are you now? The imperial doctor can detoxify you." Han Yao, who was following closely behind, originally wanted to run towards Princess Ding Yuan, but when she saw Ling Chu next to her, she stopped in her tracks and subconsciously looked towards King Ding Yuan and the others. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 276. Han Yao secretly breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that the 3 of them, father and son, were surrounding Princess Ding Yuan. Handkerchief wiped his face twice, tears immediately fell down one after another, and then he rushed towards Princess Ding Yuan with a sad face, "Mother concubine." The mournful cries drowned out Han Song's urgent voice. King Ding Yuan and Han Lin suddenly frowned and their faces darkened. Just when Han Lin couldn't help but interrupt Han Yao's cry, a clear voice sounded behind him. "Miss Han, the princess is not dead yet, what kind of morning are you howling here? Han Yao stopped crying and glared at Ling Chu with an angry face. Just as he was about to speak, Ling Chu had already turned away and looked at Princess Ding Yuan. Princess, you promised to take me to a theater and a restaurant, but you are not allowed to break the promise. Seeing Ling Chu talking and smiling at Princess Ding Yuan, Han Yao immediately grasped the brocade handkerchief in her hand. King Ding Yuan looked at the girl in front of him and saw her take out a small porcelain white bottle and pour out a small black pill from it. Han Song was unhappy when he saw her confronting Han Yao, but now he saw that she wanted to give the pills to his mother and concubine, and he frowned even more. Before he could speak, Han Yao had already glared at Ling Chu. Miss Ling, although you don't know medical skills and are not a doctor, you should know that you can't just take medicine casually, right? Han Song also followed up and said, we appreciate the girl's kindness, but forget about this medicine. The poison of my mother-in-law can only be cured by the imperial doctor. Han Song had just arrived, and he didn't know that the imperial doctor could not cure the poison of the puffer fish, but King Ding Yuan had just heard what Sun Yuan Zheng and the others said. He has been married to Princess Ding Yuan for many years, and their relationship has always been good. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, he does not want to miss it. Girl, this medicine. Ling Chu looked at him steadily and said concisely, Your Majesty, this medicine can cure the poison of puffer fish. Sun Yuanzheng and other imperial doctors looked over with surprise in their eyes. Although King Ding Yuan wanted to save his wife, he hesitated and said, Girl, can you let the imperial doctor check this medicine? Han Yao and Han Song both frowned. Father. King Ding Yuan waved his hand at them. Ling Chu shook his head and said softly, Your Majesty, this medicine is made from more than 30 precious medicinal materials and is hard to obtain. I don't have much of this medicine in my hands, and it cannot withstand even a little damage. If the delay continues, the princess may be in danger of her life. This, King Ding Yuan was still hesitating. Unexpectedly, Princess Ding Yuan heard Ling Chu's words while she was in a daze. For some reason, Princess Ding Yuan felt a dull pain in her heart when she heard that King Ding Yuan did not believe her. Biting the tip of her tongue, the pain brought her consciousness back, and she struggled to open her eyes. Smiled weakly at Ling Chu, Chu, give me the medicine. Han Yao's expression changed and she said anxiously, Mother, concubine, how can you eat something of unknown origin? Ling Chu looked at Han Yao coldly. She had always been cold-tempered. If she hadn't been unable to bear seeing something happen to Princess Ding Yuan, she would have turned around and left long ago. Han Yao didn't believe that Ling Chu's medicine could detoxify, but some people were vying for it. Prince Jing knew that his mother and concubine would take advantage of today's banquet to show him the future crown prince. He didn't want to be forced to get married, so he didn't attend today's banquet. It was only after Princess Jing was poisoned that Prince Jing sent someone back to inform her. Prince Jing hurried into the palace and learned that the imperial doctor could not detoxify the poison. He was in despair, but when he heard what Han Yao and the others said, he immediately rushed towards Ling Chu without hesitation. Miss Ling, you have the antidote, can you give me one? I don't know if he was afraid of being late, but the Ding Yuan palace wanted to take away the medicine. Prince Jing looked anxious. I don't want it in vain medicine, as long as it can save my mother and concubine, whatever you want, I can give it to you as long as my Prince Jing's palace has it. Aren't you afraid that there is something wrong with this medicine? Others did not believe Ling Chu, but Prince Jing was extremely convinced of her abilities. After all, he was haunted by the ghost at the beginning, and the Taoist priest Qingyang of Kongxiu Temple was deceived. It was Ling Chu who saw through the method of the ghost and saved him. After hearing Ling Chu's question, Prince Jing was so anxious that he almost bowed to her. Auntie, if I were afraid, I wouldn't come to you to get the medicine. Quick, give me the medicine. Ling Chu originally planned to save Princess Jing, but seeing that her condition was not that serious, he originally planned to give Princess Dingyuan the antidote first and then save her. Prince Jing is willing to believe her, which saves him a lot of trouble. King Dingyuan's lips moved and he was about to speak. However, he saw that Ling Chu had already handed the pill to Prince Jing. Prince Jing seemed to be afraid that the medicine would be stolen, so he turned around and ran away after taking it. Here, Prince Dingyuan and his sons felt quite unhappy when they saw that the medicine had been taken away. Princess Dingyuan's eyes dimmed and she sighed in her heart. She knew that it was not that King Dingyuan and the others did not want to save her, but that they were cautious by nature, and since Ling Chu was not a doctor, they would inevitably doubt the medicine. Ordinarily, Ling Chu was not her daughter, and she didn't know whether the medicine could detoxify her body. But for some reason, she just didn't want to see her sad. Ling Chu's clothes were stained by a palace maid during the banquet, so she went to change her clothes. Princess Dingyuan went to give her clothes, but she didn't use much of the royal food. Later I saw that the palace maid had eaten Mrs. Song's fish soup. She happened to take a few more bites, so the poison on her body was more serious than that of Princess Jing. Seeing that Princess Dingyuan's consciousness began to fade again, King Dingyuan's face changed slightly and he couldn't help but look at Ling Chu, Miss Ling. Han Song looked confused. He wanted to save his mother and concubine, but he was worried that there might be something wrong with the medicine. He didn't know how to stop him, so he asked Miss Ling for medicine. Han Yao lowered her head, holding the handkerchief with both hands, not knowing what she was thinking. Ling Chu ignored them and quickly stepped forward, took out the medicine bottle and poured a pill into Princess Dingyuan's mouth. Dingyuan King and his son waited nervously. As for Princess Jing, although the situation is not as serious as that of Princess Dingyuan, the toxin erosion is not easy to bear. Although Ling Chu was not an imperial physician, when she dealt with the female ghost in Prince Jing's mansion, Prince Jing and his wife witnessed her abilities with their own eyes. Although I don't know if the medicine can detoxify, the imperial doctors have no choice but to believe in her. Of the three, Princess Guangping was the least poisoned. She only had a taste of Mrs. Song's fish soup, and she could still hold on at this moment. Prince Guangping originally wanted to help her ask Ling Chu for an antidote, but Princess Guangping stopped her with her eyes. Princess Jing and the others tried the medicine first, and it suited her plan. It was not difficult to guess Princess Guangping's thoughts. Ling Chu glanced at her briefly and looked away, ignoring her. Not long after taking the antidote, Princess Jing's complexion began to improve. Sun Yuanzheng was also curious about the effect of the antidote and couldn't wait to step forward to feel his pulse. Just after taking Princess Jing's pulse, Princess Dingyuan over there also woke up. Princess Guangping couldn't hold on any longer. Seeing that the medicine was effective, she couldn't wait to speak. Miss Ling, you still have antidote pills, give me one quickly. Ling Chu glanced at her and said softly, yes, 50,000 taels. End of this chapter. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 277. As soon as Ling Chu finished speaking, a hint of sarcasm flashed in Han Yao's eyes. This is really crazy about money. She really dares to speak in front of so many people. I don't even think about who Guangping Wang and his wife are, who would allow her to open her mouth like a lion. Princess Pingyang said angrily, 50,000 taels, why don't you go and grab it? If the princess thinks it's expensive, you can give her reed root soup to the princess. It doesn't cost any money. I only have the last pill left in my detoxification pill, just in case. Princess Guangping glared at Ling Chu angrily. She dared to charge so much money for just a pill. This must have known that Lin Yujia's affair was her fault and wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge. But so what if she knew? The doctor cannot cure the pufferfish poison. Only this has the antidote. Princess Guangping wanted to survive, but she was really unwilling to spend 50,000 taels for a medicine. Princess Pingyang doesn't even want to. Miss Ling, you didn't take any money for the detoxification pills given to Princess Jing and Princess Dingyuan, so why should you charge us 50,000 taels? This princess has no brains. The antidote pills are hers, and she can give them to whomever she likes, whether or not she takes money is up to her pleasure. Princess Jing was cured of the poison, and Prince Jing was relieved. Princess Pingyang, Miss Ling is neither a doctor nor a doctor, so no one can care about who she wants to give her things to, right? Also, is there something wrong with your ears? Although I didn't say that I would give you money, I have promised that no matter what Miss Ling wants, as long as our Prince Jing's palace has it, we can give it to you. 50,000 taels can save the life of my mother and concubine. I think it's a good deal. But it seems that Princess Guangping is not worth 50,000 taels in the eyes of the princess. Although he felt disgusted in his heart, King Jing still saved face for his son and did not tear him down in public. Instead, he turned to Ling Chu and said, Miss Ling is not an imperial doctor, but she took out the life-saving medicine she had saved to save my concubine. You are the benefactor of our Prince Jing's palace. If you need anything in the future, you can bring this jade pendant to the palace. As long as it is not a matter of treason or murder, Prince Jing's palace can help you. King Jing took off a jade pendant hanging from his waist and handed it to Ling Chu. Your Majesty, this is too expensive. Although she exchanged 2 pieces of jade for the detoxification pill, Prince Jing's jade pendant was too hot to handle. If she accepted it, she would not know how much trouble it would cause in the future. Ling Chu didn't want it, but Prince Jing snatched the jade pendant from Prince Jing's hand and put it directly into her hand. It's just a broken jade pendant. My father has a lot of it in his warehouse. After being disgusted, Prince Jing whispered again, put it away quickly. It's rare for my father to be generous. If you miss this village, you won't have this shop, you would be a fool not to accept it. Prince Jing thought that he spoke quietly enough that Prince Jing could not hear him. But he forgot that his father was a martial arts practitioner, so this distance could not be hidden from him at all. Prince Jing was so angry that he blew his beard and stared. Is he such a stingy person? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, so he slapped his son on the back of the head and breathed. Prince Jing was so angry that he jumped up and down. Father, if I become stupid one day, I will definitely be beaten stupid by you. Prince Jing looked disgusted. I don't see how smart you are now. Ling Chu looked at the father and son, and the corners of his mouth twitched again and again. Princess Jing was not surprised and ignored them. She held her hand with a smile on her face and said, keep it, Jing is right, it's just a jade pendant, not worth anything. Usually, father and son are not in the house, so I feel so bored all alone. If you are okay, you can come over and talk to me. Princess Jing already had a good impression of Ling Chu. If she hadn't come up with the antidote today, her life would have been sealed. The more he looked at her, the more he liked her, and he even considered whether to hire her back as his daughter-in-law. Princess Dingyuan regained her consciousness. King Dingyuan and several of her children gathered around her to greet her, but her eyes couldn't help but look at Ling Chu, who was chatting and laughing with Princess Jing. Han Yao's heart sank. King Dingyuan followed the princess's gaze and felt grateful and guilty to the girl. He turned back to the princess and said, thanks to that little girl for rescuing you today. When you get back, give her the title deed of Miwen Villa. The girl seems to be in poor health, and the hot spring pool in Zhuangzi Mountain is just right for her to maintain her health. Look. Let's look at some more headgear for her, including silk and satin. Princess Dingyuan looked at him with a smile, that's what I meant. Han Lin had no objection to this. In his opinion, these were all external possessions. He was also grateful to Miss Ling for saving his mother-in-law. But when Han Song saw Han Yao lowering her head, he knew that she must be feeling uncomfortable. Father, Isn't Miwan Villa too expensive? Why not replace it with something else? Miwan Villa was given by the emperor. Although it is not big, it is close to Kyoto and only on the outskirts of Kyoto. The most rare thing is that there are two hot spring pools in the villa, one large and one small. Mountain villas on the outskirts of Beijing are rare, and villas with hot springs like this are even rarer. This is not something you can buy with money. He knew that Han Yao had always liked the Miwan villa, and even heard the maid next to her mention that she wanted to use the village as a dowry in the future. King Dingyuan looked at his younger son calmly. In your eyes, is the villa more valuable, or is the life of your mother and concubine more important? Of course the life of the mother and concubine is important. Ling Chu originally didn't want anything from Prince Dingyuan's palace, but when he saw Han Yao's knuckles turned white while holding the handkerchief, he immediately changed his mind. If King Dingyuan and his wife were her biological parents, she would deserve those things. Even if it were not her parents, she would not feel guilty if she accepted the thank you gift from Prince Dingyuan's mansion. After all, the antidote pills didn't fall from the sky. She exchanged them for 2 pieces of emerald. Besides, with Han Yao's hatred for her, even if she doesn't accept it, her hatred for her will not be any less. Princess Guangping looked here with a gloomy face, originally thinking that Prince Jing's palace and Prince Dingyuan's palace would be somewhat dissatisfied with the price of 50,000 taels. If they could negotiate a price with that bitch, she wouldn't have to give so much money. Who knew it was just wishful thinking on her part? Princess Pingyang did not give up and ask Sun Yuanzheng and other imperial doctors. The answer is always the same: nothing can be done. Princess Guangping felt a cramp in her abdomen and her consciousness began to blur. She knew she couldn't hold on any longer. Your Majesty. King Guangping glanced at her and frowned. 50,000 taels for a pill. Even if he is a prince, he still feels pain in his body. King Jing and King Dingyuan had no objection to the price, so he couldn't say much. Miss Ling, I don't have that many banknotes with me. Can you give me the antidote first and ask the housekeeper to deliver the banknotes to your house when I get back? Ling Chu nodded with a smile. Xiaoji, give the antidote to the prince. If you get the banknote tomorrow, you will have money to find a doctor to treat your injury. Princess Guangping clenched her fists in anger. The little really wanted revenge. End of chapter. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 278. The banquet menu ordered by the Empress clearly did not include pufferfish. But pufferfish was found in Mrs. Song's fish soup. The royal chef in charge of making fish soup swore that he never used pufferfish to make fish soup. Ning Chui and the Minister of Punishment together interrogated all the people in the imperial dining room, as well as the maids who were waiting at the banquet. Finally a suspect was identified. That man is one of the many side dish cooks in the imperial kitchen. His surname is Su. According to Chef Liao's confession, Chef Zhou was originally responsible for serving dishes under him, but he suddenly suffered from a bad stomach today. Chef Su took the initiative to find Liao Yuchu and said that he had few tasks to take care of today and could help him instead of Chef Zhou. Su Yuchu was not usually a helpful person, but today he took the initiative to help. Liao Yuchu originally thought it was a little strange. But Chef Zhou's stomach was so full that he couldn't help him with the dishes. Everyone else has their own things to be responsible for. At this moment, he can't find anyone else to replace Chef Zhou. Liao Yuchu saw that Chef Su was willing to help and was grateful to him again and again. At first, when Chef Su was preparing the dishes, Chef Liao was worried and even observed carefully. But seeing that he prepared the dishes in an orderly manner and his proficiency was no worse than that of Chef Zhou, Chef Liao was relieved and turned to concentrate on cooking. But he didn't expect that the cook would dare to mix the pufferfish skin into Mrs. Song's fish soup while the dishes were being prepared. Su Chui did not plead guilty to the charges against Liao Yuchu. With an indignant look on his face, he cried out, "Chef Liao, I saw that Chef Joe was not feeling well, so I took the initiative to help you. It's okay if you're not grateful, but you still wronged me. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Sue the cook swore to heaven that he had not tampered with Mrs. Song's fish soup. The Minister of Punishment interrogated him for a long time, but he did not admit it. Ning Chui saw this and took over the interrogation himself. As the commander of the Jinyi Guards, Ning Chui is usually more ruthless than the Minister of Punishment, and the title of God of Killing is not just for fun. When Su Cook saw him, he was instinctively afraid. When interrogated, his words revealed a guilty conscience. Ning Chui immediately ordered his execution. Wei Feng took matters into his own hands. Su Cook is just an ordinary person, how can he withstand Wei Feng's methods? But after a while he was crying and shouting for a confession. Your Majesty, I made a mistake. I deserve to die. Chef Su kowtowed to the emperor. After standing up, he stretched out his hand and pointed at Ling Chu. It's Miss Ling, she gave me 100 taels and gave instructions the younger one mixed the pufferfish skin into Mrs. Song's fish soup. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone turned to glare at Ling Chu. Ling Chu's hand holding the tea remained motionless, and he even took a slow sip before putting down the teacup. Looking at Su Yuchu with a faint look, waiting for him to continue. Su Yuchu was shocked by her gaze and felt uneasy for no reason. But now, he has only one way to go to the dark side. Previously in the royal garden, Miss Xiao poisoned Miss Cao and the Queen's Koi to death, but she put the blame on Miss Ling. Miss Ling believed that these things were all instigated by Princess Ping Yang. She resented Princess Ping Yang for instructing Miss Xiao to frame her, so she asked the young lady to mix puffer fish skins into the fish soup in order to teach Princess Guangping and Princess Ping Yang a lesson. Princess Guangping spent 50,000 taels to buy detoxification pills, and she was already unhappy. Hearing what Chef Su said, he immediately became furious. Dear Ling Chu, it turns out it was you who was responsible first. You ordered the kitchen servants to poison us, and then sold us the antidote. You dared to ask for 150,000 taels for just 3 antidote pills. It seems that the upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. Your grandfather was greedy, and you, the granddaughter, are just as greedy. Your Majesty, a vicious and greedy woman like Miss Ling deserves to be punished. Ling Chu looked at Princess Guangping with cold eyes. She really shouldn't have been soft-hearted and gave her the antidote pills. This kind of person should let her be poisoned to death. Ning Chui said expressionlessly, Princess Guangping, you were convicted before the trial of the case was over. Should I let you take the position of commander? Princess Guangping's face turned red and she felt indignant. It could be seen that the emperor was looking at her with a majestic expression, and the anger in his heart had to be suppressed. When Princess Ping Yang saw Ning Chui defending Ling Chu, she wanted to call her a vixen, but she was afraid of damaging her own image. Chef Su, you said that I ordered you to mix the pufferfish skin into the fish soup. Do you dare to ask when and where I gave the pufferfish skin to you? Shortly after the banquet started, you deliberately tripped the palace maid and soiled your clothes. You left the banquet on the pretext of changing your clothes, sneaked into the royal kitchen, found a young lady, and handed me the pufferfish skin and the banknotes. Princess Ding Yuan, who had been looking at Ling Chu worriedly, suddenly yelled at Chef Su, you are lying. After Miss Ling left the banquet, I was the one who accompanied her to change clothes. She has never been to the imperial kitchen, so how could she instruct you to mix puffer fish skin into the fish soup? Princess Jing followed closely and said, yes, I personally watched Princess Ding Yuan go to deliver clothes to Miss Ling. You, a cook, are so brave, you dare to frame Miss Ling. Miss Ling entered the palace for the first time today. She doesn't even know where to open the door to the imperial dining room. How can she avoid so many maids in the palace and find the imperial dining room? Sous Chef was speechless after being retorted by Princess Ding Yuan and Princess Zheng. Princess Guangping said in a strange manner, Princess Ding Yuan, Miss Ling clearly left the banquet first, and you went to give her clothes later. Maybe Miss Ling went to the imperial dining room at that time, but you didn't see it? It's impossible. When Miss Ling left, the palace maid was always with her. If she went to the imperial dining room, the palace maid would definitely know. Ling Chu did not tell the queen's steward about the incident in the side hall, and the maid was not punished. She was grateful in her heart. After hearing what Princess Ding Yuan said, she hurriedly said, when Miss Ling went to change clothes, the servant followed her. She has indeed never been to the imperial dining room. Su Cook was so worried that he was sweating profusely, but he couldn't think of how to defend himself. Ling Chu looked at him coldly. Tell me, I have no enmity with Princess Ding Yuan and Princess Zheng. Why did I ask you to kill them with blowfish poison because of my grudge? Su kitchen server felt guilty and averted his eyes, and said casually, the little one accidentally mixed the pufferfish skin into the whole pot of fish soup, and that's why they also ate it by mistake. Ling Chu pressed forward, since the whole pot of fish soup is filled with pufferfish skin, why is it that everyone else is fine and only our table is poisoned? Su Cook was speechless again. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the man above him glaring at him dissatisfied. Su Chef's heart felt like he had eaten Coptus chinensis. At this point, he had no choice but to go all the way to the dark side. The little one is stupid and can't speak, but the fact is that Miss Ling bribed the little one with money and forced the little one to mix the pufferfish skin into the fish soup. Thanks to Pen Yongfang, 1360-081-5236, Tianjiao and other book friends for their monthly support. Thanks to King Shizhuang Chuang, 641,417, Pen Yongfang, 2023-071-9643. CE, by taxi's head is sleepy, not, Yangliuan, 201703181914308335, Tibi Yanfu, UN1, 2023-033-1230. De, 20230208431051, gustful wind and lightning, 854-729, 202301210127022243, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, Yunyun Zongshen, CHLWCH, Eden of the East, Cheesy 1, Prose. BA, just keep it simple, why do you grow old, falling leaves no autumn. Ad, 1402121840214228, A. Purple Leaves. It is supported by the recommendation votes of book friends such as, Zeng, and Ixixi. Thanks to Hungziu and the book friends who support Hungziu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 279. Chapter 279 Suicide out of fear of crime. Although Chef Su gritted his teeth, he insisted that Ling Chu bribed him. But everyone present could tell that there were lots of loopholes in his words. The emperor said solemnly, Ning Iking, drag him down and interrogate the person behind this. As soon as he finished speaking, Chef Su collapsed to the ground. He is just an ordinary person and cannot bear the punishment of Jin Yaiwei at all. But even if he could bear it, he couldn't. In fact, the moment he took action, he knew that he had only a dead end. Su kitchen server lowered his head in despair, feeling angry and helpless in his heart. He didn't want to poison anyone, but it was a pity that he couldn't help himself. Ning Chui was just about to wave his hand to Wei Feng to drag him down again, but suddenly he saw a trace of black blood spilling from Chef Su's lips. The secret passage is not good. His body flashed and he reached Chef Su's side. He stretched out his hand and pinched his chin. It's a pity that it was a step too slow after all. Ning Chui had a stern look on his face. It was because he was careless. I didn't expect that this cook, just an ordinary person, had poison hidden in his teeth. Seeing the cook bite the poison and kill himself, some timid ladies screamed in fright. When he saw the emperor and queen sitting at the head, he was so frightened that he covered his mouth. Ling Chu watched the ghost of Chef Su stand up from the ground, then faced his body lying on the ground, wiping tears from his red eyes. Then he raised his head and glanced into the distance, choking and saying, "Sister, my eldest brother is gone, and I can no longer help you. I hope you can give the second prince a boy and a half girl, and you will have someone to rely on in the future, not counting eldest brother death in vain. You don't have to be sad if your eldest brother is gone. Being able to escape from this prison is not a bad thing. In the next life, the eldest brother must be reincarnated into a wealthy family, so that he no longer has to worry about serving noble people all day long." Ling Chu followed Chef Su's line of sight, but there was no one where he looked. "That direction is probably the palace where the second prince lives." Su the cook thought he was dead and no one heard him. After talking to himself, he turned around and left without any regrets. Ling Chu almost rolled his eyes, put the basin on her head, and wanted to be reincarnated into a wealthy family. It's really daring to think about it. With a flick of the hand, a talisman light fell on Chef Su, immobilizing him. Su Chef could not move, staring at Ling Chu with fear in his eyes. Princess Guangping saw that Chef Su had committed suicide. She was not afraid, but was moved in her heart. Su kitchen server insisted to her death that it was the little who ordered her to do this, and she had to wear this basin even if she didn't. After being convicted, even if she refuses to give the 50,000 taels, others will not accuse her. Princess Guangping was worried about Ning Chui. When she saw the Minister of Punishment on the side, she immediately said, "Master Di, Chef Su's death certificate proves his innocence, which shows that he did not lie." Miss Ling first bribed the kitchen servant and ordered him to poison, and then took the opportunity to threaten the antidote. The lion extorted 150,000 taels and was punished for several crimes. What crime should he be punished for? The Minister of Punishment has never seen anyone before, so he guessed her thoughts in a flash of his mind. What Chef Su said is just his own words, and there is no way to prove that it was Miss Ling who instigated him. As for blackmail, I have never seen Miss Ling receive a penny. Princess Ding Yuan has always been gentle and rarely gets angry, but this time she couldn't help but glare at Princess Guangping. Miss Ling saved me and Princess Jing with her own life-saving medicine and didn't charge a penny. But Princess Jing and I are not that kind of ungrateful people. To thank Miss Ling for saving her life, we took the initiative to give her a thank you gift. How did it come to your mouth that this became blackmail? Princess Jing sneered at Princess Guangping. The death of Chef Su, is it called a death certificate to prove innocence? It was clearly a suicide out of fear of crime. Miss Ling didn't force you to buy the antidote, it was you who didn't want to die, so you cried and begged her for it. Sell you the medicine. If someone saves you, you don't say thank you, but instead burn the bridge across the river, and you are not afraid of others poking your back. Or are you saying that your Guangping palace is now an empty shell and can't even afford 50,000 taels of medicine? Princess Guangping's face turned black and her fingernails were almost cut off. The Queen Mother has always been fond of her youngest son, Prince Jing, and she has always been kind to her daughter-in-law, Princess Jing. Princess Guangping knew that Princess Jing never had to look at anyone's face among the noble ladies in Kyoto, but she didn't expect that she would make it difficult for her to get off the stage in front of so many people. Concubine An's niece was killed by Ping Yang, and she was happy to see Princess Guangping embarrassed. It's just that she doesn't like Princess Jing either. Princess, as the old saying goes, when a person is about to die, his words are also good. As the saying goes, flies don't bite seamless eggs, so why did Chef Su insist that it was Miss Ling who instigated it until his death, instead of saying it was someone else? Ning Chui looked at Ling Chu and saw that she had a pale face and lowered her head in silence, feeling guilty in her heart. If he hadn't been careless and let Chef Su bite himself with poison, she wouldn't have been put in an excrement basin. Your Majesty, I will take people to search the imperial kitchen to see if there is anything missing. The emperor was already impatient when he heard those people arguing. Naturally, he didn't believe that it was Ling Chu who ordered Chef Su to tamper with the fish soup. If the person behind him is not found out, it is like a sword hanging over his head. These people had treacherous intentions and instigated people to poison his royal meal, with disastrous consequences. Ning Chui was about to take people to the imperial kitchen to search for puffer fish, but Ling Chu quickly took out the copper coins and turtle shells and made a prediction. Lord Ning, there is no puffer fish in the imperial dining room. The reason why Ling Chu didn't speak just now was because she was busy using the system to search for the puffer fish used by Su Su. The imperial dining rooms in the palace are divided into inner and outer imperial dining rooms. The inner imperial dining rooms are generally used to prepare meals for the concubines and other people in each palace. The outer imperial dining room is responsible for the meals of the ministers, imperial doctors, guards, and eunuchs and maids in the palace. In addition, when banquets are held in the palace, the outer imperial kitchen is also responsible. As for the emperor, the queen mother and the empress, they all have their own dining rooms. Today the queen is hosting a banquet, and all the meals are prepared by the imperial kitchen. But the puffer fish was not in the imperial kitchen at all. Even if Ning Chui led people to search the place, he would not find it. Pufferfish is too dangerous and the palace has never allowed eating it. Not only did the outer imperial dining room not have one, but the imperial chef in the inner imperial dining room did not dare to do it knowingly. Ning Chui took a look at the hexagram and didn't understand it. He simply didn't embarrass himself and asked Ling Chu directly. Miss Ling, have you discovered anything? Ling Chu nodded and pointed, according to the hexagram, it's in that direction. Ning Chui looked in the direction of her finger. He frowned slightly, that was the direction of Jinghua Palace. Concubine Anne's expression changed for a moment, and she quickly returned to her calm demeanor. As the lord of the palace, the emperor is very familiar with the entire palace. His face suddenly darkened. Ling Chu ignored everyone's thoughts, put away the copper coin turtle shell, and made a secret to put away the ghost of Chef Su. Pick up your feet and follow the system's guidance and walk forward. End of this chapter. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 280. The second prince fell down in the imperial garden earlier. Not only did he sprain his foot, but he also had a bruise on his face. In order not to let others see the injury on his face, he did not attend today's banquet. After seeing the imperial doctor for a diagnosis, the second prince was bored in his palace. Thinking of the embarrassing situation of wrestling in front of Ning Chui and Ling Chu, he felt angry and depressed. Regardless of whether it was broad daylight or not, he grabbed the maid next to him and started having fun. After venting, you will inevitably feel hungry. Although the second prince is not a prince, his biological mother, concubine Anne, is favored, and the emperor has been fond of him since he was a child. Except for not having the title of prince, the second prince is no worse than the prince in terms of food and clothing. The prince's East Palace has a dining room, and the second prince's Jinghua Palace also has one. Since he was unable to attend today's banquet, the second prince ordered the imperial chef to prepare a large table of dishes for him. At this moment, a group of beautiful palace maids were waiting for him to eat. The second prince was tasting delicious wine and delicacies, and his hands were not idle. He was hugging him from left to right. There were many singers in scantily clad clothes singing and dancing in front of him. Ling Chu followed the system's guidance and walked forward quickly. Concubine Anne's face changed slightly when she saw that she was going in the direction of Jinghua Palace, and she hurriedly and secretly winked at the palace maid next to her. The maid quietly turned and left. Ling Chu noticed it, but ignored it. When the palace maid took a shortcut, Ling Chu attached an invisibility charm to the little hammer, summoned it from the system, and knocked the palace maid unconscious with one hammer. Concubine knew nothing about this, but when she arrived at the gate of Jinghua Palace, her expression changed. The emperor's face suddenly darkened as he listened to the melancholy sound coming from inside. Concubine and the second prince were so favored that no one dared to look for trouble in Jinghua Palace. In addition to today's banquet, the guarding the door had never thought that the emperor would suddenly arrive, and was currently hiding somewhere to laze around. As soon as the emperor waved his hand, Eunuchan, the chief eunuch, hurriedly opened the palace door. After entering, Ling Chu expected to see many palace maids and eunuchs. Unexpectedly, there is no one. Those palace maids are busy vying for favor in front of the second prince at the moment. They all think that if they succeed in getting out of bed and give birth to a boy and a half girl, they will reach the sky in one step. The eunuchs knew that the second prince did not want to be disturbed when he was hanging out with the palace maids, so they were happy to hide and relax. Since she didn't see anyone waiting, Concubine tried to find someone to go in and remind the second prince, but she couldn't find him. You can only do it in a hurry. The emperor walked all the way to the main hall with a sullen face. The second prince was very busy at the moment. His left hand was working on the lapel of the palace maid's clothes, and his right hand was holding another singer, moving continuously from the waist down. He tilted his head back, and behind him there was a palace maid who was feeding him wine with her little cherry mouth. This is not over yet. Two dancers were kneeling in front of him to wait on him. Ning Chui saw this lewd scene and quickly looked towards Ling Chu. Seeing that she was looking at her intently without hiding, the veins on his forehead jumped again and again. If the emperor hadn't been standing by, he almost couldn't help but rush forward and cover her eyes. Such a lively scene made the emperor's face sink as deep as the bottom of a pot. Concubine almost fainted from anger. She originally thought that her son would at best ask a dancing girl to perform dances for him, but she did not expect that Qing Tianberry would act so recklessly. Concubine Anne's personal maid was knocked unconscious by Ling Chu, but the queen was followed by the maids. But the queen was originally annoyed that Concubine and her son always competed with her and the prince for favor, which just allowed the emperor to see clearly what kind of person the second prince was. How could she ask her people to remind the second prince? Seeing the anger on the emperor's face, Concubine had no choice but to bite the bullet and shout in a hurry, "Muir!" Hearing Concubine Anne's voice, the second prince subconsciously turned around. When he saw the emperor, his face changed with fright. Hurriedly pushing aside the palace maid beside him, he was about to rush over to apologize. "But I forgot about my sprained feet. I couldn't stand firm for a moment and fell hard." The emperor's face turned darker. The maids were so frightened when they saw the emperor and others that they knelt on the ground. Seeing that the second prince had fallen, they hurriedly stepped forward to help him. How could the second prince dare to let them help him in front of the emperor? After struggling to get up despite the pain, he limped towards the emperor. Concubine glanced at the emperor and saw him frowning at the second prince's legs. She hurriedly stepped forward, choking with sobs, "Muir, why is your leg injured?" Seeing Concubine Anne's wink, the second prince immediately understood that she was asking him to use the bitter meat trick. "Don't worry, mother and concubine, it's your son's unfilial piety that makes you worry." He comforted him and limped hurriedly to the emperor to pay his respects. Taking advantage of these few steps, the second prince used his internal strength to force beads of sweat from his forehead, and at the same time, his face showed a look of pain and forbearance. As expected, the anger on the emperor's face softened, and he frowned and said, "Why is your foot injured? Can you be declared an imperial doctor?" "Father, don't worry, I'm fine. I just accidentally sprained my foot in the imperial garden earlier. I've already had the imperial doctor examine me. I'll recover after a few days of rest." "Since you were injured, Why didn't you take a good rest? Instead, you acted like a fool in broad daylight. How could you behave like this? To the second prince, the emperor has always been no worse than he is to the prince. Even sometimes because of concubine Anne's relationship, the emperor indulged him more and cared for him more than the prince. Although the emperor still reprimanded him, most of his anger was gone when he saw that he had injuries on his feet. Concubine Anne was proud, but her face was full of distress. Your Majesty, calm down, Muir must have noticed an injury on her foot, that's why she didn't attend the banquet. He knows that you are usually busy with court affairs and finally took advantage of the banquet to take a break. He doesn't want you to see the injury on his foot, lest you worry. Ling Chu glanced at concubine Anne, and it seemed that she was favored for a reason. In just a few words, half of the emperor's remaining anger was gone. Okay, since my legs and feet are inconvenient, why don't I hurry up and let someone help me down to rest? I'll wait until Sun Yuanzhang comes over and let him see if he has any broken bones. The emperor's anger subsided, and concubine Anne's mother and son's anxious hearts also dropped. The queen was so angry that she almost tore the veil. Your Majesty, Miss Ling has calculated that there is a pufferfish in Jinghua Palace. If you are not careful with this thing, it will cause a big disaster. Shouldn't the chef of Jinghua Palace be changed? Hearing the queen mention pufferfish, the second prince's expression changed. Pufferfish is poisonous and is forbidden in the palace. But the second prince loved the delicacy of pufferfish the most, so he secretly asked his palace chef to cook it for him. I just didn't expect that this matter would be leaked out and the emperor would know about it. Concubine Anne was angry. Seeing that the emperor was coaxed away from her anger, she was reminded by the queen again. The emperor looked at the second prince with a sullen face. You know that pufferfish is poisonous, but you still risk your life to eat it. Sunchen, Sunchen. The second prince hesitated for a few words and wanted to deny it, but the emperor came to find him, so he must have found out everything. Just when he was about to bite the bullet and apologize, the maid in pink clothes next to him said first, Your Majesty, the second prince has not eaten pufferfish. Thanks to 1212120001, 201906050146500279, Beacon Fire 23, Shi Lai Lun Lun. CB, and other book friends for their monthly support. Thanks for the silent blessing, Daoyo. EB, Chen, China Fuse, 641,417, Yangliuan, Yangliuan, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, thanks to Long Mao. 0. 20170318191430835835, Yuan Wan, Jingyexi, Mimi Yang 98, Yunyun All Living Beings, Silent Blessings, Wind, 854-729, CHLWCH. 20230208431051, Meteor Shower. AC, 202110140933030002, Falling Leaves No Autumn. Add, just keep it simple. China Fuse, Kingsha Makeup, Forget Me Not, 201811281000506706, Ixixi, Life is Bright. Why We Grow Old, Bingling, 641,417, Chen. 202305301154159407129776. 1402121840214228 and other book friends recommendation votes support it. Thanks to Hungziu and the book friends who support Hungziu.